Elisa stood on her balcony, breathing in the evening air of the Tuscan town she had moved to after her divorce. Narrow streets, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery on the corner, the distant strumming of a guitar. It all seemed almost idyllic. Almost. Her windows faced the inner courtyard, directly across from another apartment. That was where her neighbor lived. A man in his 50s, always dressed in dark clothes, his posture stiff, his gaze heavy. The other tenants called him Signor Moretti. He rarely spoke to anyone, and no one seemed to know much about him. At first, Elisa paid no attention, but soon she began to notice odd things. Late at night, his light was always on. Sometimes she heard muffled thuds, as if something heavy was being dragged across the floor. More than once, she saw him carrying large bags into the courtyard, heavy, bulky ones he could barely manage. One night, as she was about to fall asleep, her eyes drifted to the window across the courtyard. The lamp was on, and behind the curtain she saw a woman's figure. A thin hand touched the glass, but everyone knew Signor Moretti lived alone. From that moment, Elisa's peace was gone. Elisa began to watch her neighbor, every movement, every habit, the time he came home. She recorded it all in a small notebook. She noticed that in the evenings, he often returned with large boxes. Nobody ever saw him take them back out. At a cafe, she mentioned her suspicions to her friend Julia. Julia only laughed. "Elisa, you read too many crime novels." In Italy, every man has his peculiarities, but Elisa's unease only deepened. One day she struck up a conversation with a carabiniere who often patrolled nearby. When Moretti's name came up, the officer frowned. There had been noise complaints, but nothing serious. Just an odd man, that's all. Yet that very night, Elisa saw something that made her blood run cold. Her neighbor was dragging a large bundle wrapped in an old rug out of his apartment. His movements were tense, as if the load was far too heavy. Elisa's heart pounded. She couldn't look away. The next day, she waited until Moretti left in his car. His apartment door wasn't even locked, just an old latch. Inside, the air smelled of damp and dust. The rooms were nearly empty, the furniture sparse and old. She found the basement door and descended the creaking steps. What she saw froze her in place. Before her stood mannequins, dozens of them. They were dressed in elegant women's clothing, with wigs and makeup, bright lipstick on their lips. In the half-light, the figures looked terrifyingly alive. Elisa stumbled back, her heart racing so hard she thought it would burst. She fled the house, trembling with fear. She didn't go to the police. What could she say? My neighbor has mannequins in his basement? They would laugh her out of the station. And yet, something deep inside told her this was not just a harmless collection. For several nights, she watched Moretti obsessively. She hardly slept, hardly ate, waiting for the right moment to go back and gather proof. At last the evening came. She saw him leave. In her hand, her phone shook as she clutched it like a weapon. She crept into his house, descended to the basement, and began snapping pictures of the mannequins. And then a voice rang out. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Elisa spun around. Moretti stood in the doorway. His eyes held no anger, no fear, only calm. "My wife and daughter died in a car accident," he said softly. "I couldn't let them go, so I recreate them. I keep them here, forever alive." Elisa's breath caught in her throat. She looked up and saw the wall, covered in photographs, dozens of pictures of women. Among them, her own photo, taken through her apartment window. Moretti stepped closer. His voice was still gentle, almost tender. "Now you'll become part of my collection, Elisa." The last thing she heard was the heavy sound of the basement door slamming shut behind her.